Every change and improvement needed to be tested, and as it turned out, our testing did not show a big part of the issues you experienced while playing the game.
What? Come on, man. Hello and welcome to the channel. CD Projekt Red just released its statement on YouTube, and I wanted to give you a perspective from a quality engineer and see if whatever they said actually kind of makes sense. A little bit of history about me. I've been a quality engineer for 10 years, working in automotive and aerospace industry. Basically what a quality engineer is, we are the last line of defense between the customer and the production. And we pretty much control what goes on to the shipping docks before it hits the consumer market. I don't know what they're gonna say, so let's just hear them out.
Marcin Iwiński, and I'm the co-founder of CD Projekt. When I started CD Projekt 25 years ago, one of its founding principles was honest and direct communication with gamers.
Yeah, they've been very honest in the past. Whatever they've done this last December of 2020 was kind of something that hit everybody by a storm. It was something unexpected from them. For a company that's being looked at as the ones that always have a very transparent communication, they have been very, a little bit sneaky lately. And I just wanted to notice this just off the bat, like I am not hating on CD Projekt Red. I actually am a big fan. I commend them for actually releasing a video like this. None of the other big companies do that. Not even like I'm looking at EA or Activision. None of them do something like that. But at least they're owning up to their mistake. Just want to see if they're gonna start doing this and blaming everybody else for the screw up.
Part of CD Projekt was born. It added something important to that principle: the ambition to make the best games in the world. It became our mission and something that guided us up until now. Based on that legacy of genuine and honest communication, you've trusted us and pre-ordered our game.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like a lot of people put CD Projekt as an exception for pre-ordering, and it ended up being a huge disappointment, especially for people who took some time off because of the pandemic. No one was traveling, so the only time off they can take was pretty much to sit and play Cyberpunk, and it was completely ruined.
And despite good reviews on PC, the console version of Cyberpunk 2077 did not meet the quality standard we wanted it to meet. I and the entire leadership team are deeply sorry for this, and this video is me publicly owning up to that.
Okay, at least until now, he's not blaming the development, he's not blaming the engineers, he's just blaming himself. And that's, I think this is the whole kind of perception that the people in suits are the one that tried to push that product out when it was not ready.
Please don't fault any of our teams for what happened. They all are incredibly talented and hardworking. Myself and the board are the final decision makers, and it was our call to release the game. Although, believe me, we never ever intended for anything like this to happen.
This is a statement that it's kind of very common in engineering world, sadly, that we already know that, let's say, the product is not up to the standard or something is up with it, but because we run by tolerances, we know, okay, like it's within that minimum range, it'll be okay, because this is the minimum. So it was like, let's say you're releasing 1,000 copies, 1 in a million or maybe 1 in 10 million copies will be faulty, and you're like, yeah, this is an acceptable range of making business. But this, at least for the PlayStation and the Xbox, is something that is, they tested it and they approved it.
Best to regain your trust. Now I'd like to tell you how the situation looked like from the inside. Cyberpunk 2077 is huge in scope. And I'm not only talking about quests or things you see at first glance. I'm talking about a multitude of custom objects, interacting systems, and mechanics. In the game, everything is not stretched out over flat terrain where we can make things less taxing hardware-wise, but condensed in one big city and in a relatively loading-free environment.
So this is something that I think maybe was overlooked a little bit, because if they're using the same technology from Witcher 3, that was like, hey, it was released on the older gens, and it's running okay. So that means we can make any game run with the same engine. But that was probably something from the development phase that was pre-approved based on previous data. And then when they started to get too excited with the production and build up a lot more condensed, dense areas with a lot more NPCs, interactive and cars, which all of the other older games didn't have. And now they're facing this new problem where the older gen consoles cannot load up or cannot keep up with all of this information that's been thrown at you. So they probably have to throttle something else rather than the actual game. So they're like, hey, let's just load the textures with a little bit delay to get the game at least playable. So from their perspective, the game is playable as a bare minimum. But the thing that they didn't, this is the whole situation. Hey, the game is playable. With the crashes, with the bugs, it is playable. But is it up to the standard of the consumer? The way the standard work is, if the consumer will look at it for 10 seconds or more, then it is acceptable. That you won't notice it. Like any average consumer, when they look at the product, let's say you're trying to buy a window and there is a tiny little blemish at the very corner on the top. Can you see that? No, but if you're going through with a magnifying glass and looking over, you will find it. So that means that it passes our test and it's okay for consumer. But this, when you have a game that crashes every 5 minutes and having the textures take 5 to 10 seconds to load, questionable.
On its own, this is a challenge, but we made it even more difficult for ourselves by wanting to make the game look epic on PCs and then adjusting it to consoles, especially old gens.
Yeah, I believe that.
That was our core assumption, and things did not look super difficult at first. We knew the hardware gap, yes, but ultimately, I think that time has proven that we've underestimated the task. Concrete example and the main culprit, we had to constantly improve our in-game streaming system for all-gen consoles.
Yeah, and I think this is a very true statement, just based on what I was saying before. This is very, very true.
Is responsible for feeding the engine with what you see on screen, as well as the game mechanics. And since the city is so packed and the disk bandwidth of all gens is what it is, it constantly challenged us. Every change and improvement needed to be tested, and as it turned out, our testing did not show a big part of the issues you experience while playing the game.
What? Come on, man.
As we got closer to the final release, we saw significant improvements each and every day, and we really believed we would deliver in the final Day Zero update. Now let's talk about the review process.
So they believe they can fix all of the bandwidth issues by one patch? Well, the patch was huge, but still. Unless if they were working on around the clock, like they were, and they finished the patch on the 9th and then delivered on the 10th, I could see that happening, because we do run by very tight deadlines, and with the pandemic, they're not working in the office, everyone was working at home. I could see that happening, honestly, that maybe something lost in translation or communication. They're trying to feedback and they're like, hey, it's not running. Well, someone else might have it running okay. And I'm not sure how they beta tested this whole thing, but let's say if we put like a small sample size, like 4 or 5 people playing the game, one of them is probably going to run in problems. But is that how they tested it? Well, I don't think they even had a chance to test the patch based on the deadlines that they had, which put the whole December 10th in question. Was it the right call? Of course not, it wasn't, but would it have made more sense for them to test it first and delay maybe the consoles and just release the PC? Because the PC version was somewhat acceptable with the bugs. We kind of expected some bugs, but not breaking game kind of bugs. Like, like cars flipping around. The T-posing, yeah, I can see that, maybe once in a while, but cars flipping around and cars appearing out of midair and smashing into people, that is something that's they should have tested that better, or at least fixed it or acknowledged.
We started sending our PC review keys in the first days of December. On launch day, December 10th, we hit the ground running with a really...
Okay, so they released the review copies without having the patch, so...
Start on PC. While not perfect, it's a version of Cyberpunk we are very proud of. At the same time, we're fighting for quality on all-gen consoles till the very last moment. And every extra day of us working on the Day Zero update brought visible improvement. This is why we started sending console review keys on the 8th of December, which was later...
Okay, so they... So it seems like they had it done and then they sent the review keys on the 8th. That means that they probably had a couple of days to test them. They could have delayed it a couple of days or a week or so, or a couple of weeks, at least to get the other patches, like 1.4 at least.
Than we originally planned. This all happened while working from home with all the challenges resulting from the COVID-related restrictions. A lot of the dynamics we normally take for granted got lost over video calls or email, and we took that hit too.
Yeah, that probably thing. But the thing is, I still don't buy this whole lost thing. I mean, if you play the game, if you launch the game, you can clearly see there's something wrong with it.
Now I'd like to tell you about our plans for the future and present a path for Cyberpunk 2077 on consoles and PC. We have already released 3 hotfixes improving the game, but that's just the beginning. Our ultimate goal is to fix the bugs and crashes gamers are experiencing across platforms. Please expect bigger and smaller patches on a regular basis. The first update will be dropping within 10 days, and it will be followed by another, more significant one in the following weeks. We will, of course, continue to work on the game in future updates and improvements beyond that.
Okay, so they're committed. Well, obviously, have to commit to fixing that, just like The Witcher 1 when it came out.
Our big plans for supporting Cyberpunk in the long term did not change. As for the free DLC...
Okay, so they learned from their mistake, from what I'm seeing here. They stopped putting hard numbers on dates. But here is... Okay. So the patch 1.1... Well, they don't tell you when on the map. And maybe he'll say it in the audio, but just looking at this, they stopped putting a hard date because they were destroyed when they started putting dates and they had to push it back. But now, like, hey, we put it somewhere in 2021. Fantastic. So this is very orchestrated, and I'm pretty sure everything that he's talked about was run through multiple lawyers before they was put out, because they don't want anyone to come back and hold them accountable for anything that they've said. And so far, everything he said was so generic. He didn't blame anybody, so no one can come in and I'm like, hey, this is this guy's fault, that's that guy's fault, it's this department's fault. So this is very like diplomatic statement, and it's definitely came out of another suit's office, right? Just based on my experience with working with warranty, like before you release any statement to the public, it has to be like vetted. Like it goes through a lot of channels before it comes out.
Delivered them just after the release, much like we did with The Witcher 3. We decided to focus on the most important fixes and updates first, and we'll be releasing the DLCs afterwards. Expect more information in the upcoming months. For those of you playing on next-gen consoles in back compatibility, you can still expect the free next-gen update for Xbox Series consoles and PlayStation 5 arriving in 2021.
Oh, yeah, I just didn't notice that. So they're doing the next-gen console not in the very first quarter. Well, that sucks. So they're gonna... So everyone who bought it on the consoles are gonna suffer until God knows when. Maybe 6, 7 months, 8 months, December?
At the second half of the year. I'd like to end this video by assuring you that we treat this entire situation very seriously and are working hard to make it right. The guiding principles of our company are still core to what we do. We still want to make amazing games and have an open communication with you, our players. For now, our immediate focus is to work hard on making sure you enjoy Cyberpunk 2077 regardless of platform. Beyond Cyberpunk, we have many plans for the future, which we'll share more about when we're ready. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video.
Okay, so yeah, this whole thing is, you know, it's nice that they're doing this, but at the same time, like, I mean, they still screwed up. They released something they know that is not good, and they're doing this thing where you release something and ask for forgiveness later. And that is something very common in not any industry. It's all industries are doing that. Many people are doing that, and it's a sad thing that it works. So if I delay something and not have it out for, let's say, last Christmas, I might get a lot more hate than release it, and then I'll have 50-50 that hate, and then release that statement, and then I can gain back some of the other people's trust. But ultimately, like, what everything is run is not just, like, everyone wants to make a good product, and everyone hates to release something that's broken. But there are two sides to the coin, right? So there is a side that where you say, like, hi, I need to release something that is good and is playable, and the consumer will not notice all of the imperfections. And there's a side of, like, hey, I need to pay my guys, I need to pay my bills, and money now. And guess what always prevails? Even if it was not in the pandemic situation, the money side will always prevail. Just the way things work, like, you can hold a product hostage in a warehouse as long as you want. But if you go home and one of the suits says we need to make money, it will be shipped overnight when you go home. I had this done by me once when I was started as a quality engineer, and I learned a hard lesson by that. Well, I almost got fired. So I was actually put in this position before when I held some product hostage in the shipping docks. And it was not like it was bad. It was not up to the quality standards that we ship to. It's on the bare minimum, just like this. Like, it's playable, but it's not functional completely, right? My shift ends at 5 p.m. and I decided to stay up all the way up to 10 to make sure that every time they try and ship it, I would just take it back and tell the team leader, I'm like, hey, we're not shipping this tomorrow. We're not shipping this tonight. This is staying. And I wanted to make a statement like, hey, this is not leaving unless we produce something different that is up to the standards. And to CD Projekt, it's probably very similar that, hey, we know we cannot produce any better than that. And this is what we have right now. And there's a demand to ship this many product. And if we don't fulfill this quota, we will get penalized by the bigger companies. Like, hey, we ordered 1,000 copies of Cyberpunk and we only received 500. What happened? And then within the contracts, you end up losing big money because you can't fulfill the shipment. And it ends up being a bigger problem than what it is now. So when you have millions or potentially billions on the line because of Christmas, you have Christmas break, Christmas presents, and the holidays. When you put that money dollar sign next to anything, the dollar sign always wins. So for their perspective and for my boss's perspective, they'd rather ship and hold that in the, let's say, the consumer's warehouse or people's homes rather than keep it in CD Projekt's warehouse. It's not about the quality anymore. It's more about fulfilling the system, winning the politics game of the contracts. It's all contracts, lawyers. It's not about the game anymore. once the game is actually at the shipping dock, it's not about the engineers. It's all about money. I hope you like this video, and I'm not sure if I'm planning to do any more of this in the future, but if there is something else that comes up related to other games or anything that I'm interested in, I'll definitely make another video for that. But until then, I'll see you in the next one.